I was sentenced. I, Alex Yard, was sentenced, and I'm going to serve out my sentence because it's the right thing to do in order to atone for this situation. I never said I was perfect, and although today I will own my error, I will begin by first defending the very methods that are operating here on this channel of mine, because more and more people are getting upset at the discussions that have been happening here, so we need to clear up some pretty problematic misconceptions real fast, right now, today. So in part 1 of this video, I will justify this channel's methods, its very mission, by responding to Dylan Cassidy's rather hostile message. Might even be a threat. I'm going to interpret this message in the most basic, safe way possible, and then put Dylan Cassidy on notice to ensure that it is not in fact a threat. In part 2 of this video, I will acknowledge where I went wrong in these recent videos. You're going to see the sentence that Toast4786 delivered me to atone for a situation. And then in part 3 of this video, I'm going to serve out my sentence right here on mic in plain view. So let's begin by looking at Dylan Cassidy's very challenging remarks, disparaging my channel overall in the form of a comment on the first video of this format. Dylan Cassidy's comment reads as follows: "When these bad faith videos come back to bite you, just remember to embrace failure." It's honestly ridiculous how patronizing you sound. I say this as someone who's been making games alongside Maddie for 20 plus years. You do not appreciate the endurance required for game development. We deal with entitled gamers like you all the time. It's exhausting. Creators like Maddie owe you nothing. Stick to music theory, drop your weird speculations, and maybe find a healthy way to self-medicate. Leave people like Maddie Thorson, Toby Fox, Adam Neely, and 12 Tone alone. Learn to put your ego aside. You obviously have some real issues, but you are only sowing bad karma. So the first thing is first is this phrase right out of the gate, bad faith. I need to make it clear once and for all that nothing that I am doing on this channel is in bad faith or just misrepresenting scenarios to get clicks. I assure you that I would not do that. You look at my YouTube channel of music theory and video games, and why would I build all that up just to throw it away with a bunch of what Dylan seems to be as just fake, sensational, tabloid type of alarm ringing? To instantly cry bad faith is a quick way to just totally disregard and undercut the validity of your statement. I know it becomes more common with Gen Z civilians that as soon as they come across a take that they don't like, they think, oh, that person must be just talking in bad faith because their opinion doesn't align with mine. That's a total cop-out, and I firmly reject it. I mean every last thing that I say, and I do kind of play up the theatrics to make it entertaining radio, but the core message of what I'm saying is always and will only ever be rooted in fact and integrity. If you disagree with that, my black aura Dylan Cassidy, your move is to leave. Your move is to distrust my perspective. You say, Alex Yard's perspective, I don't put any weight in that. There's no lingering problem. There's not me needing to change what I'm doing here. There's just you realizing that your moral and societal compass does not align with mine. But in no universe does that become a thing on my table where I have to shift what I'm doing to accommodate you. Since Dylan Cassidy cannot mention one thing that was mentioned in the video that was in bad faith, I have every reason to totally disregard it as just more emotional backlash. Anyone watching this video now is more than willing to step up and say which part of my Earthblade or any video was discussed in bad faith. I think you have a lot of brazen gall to accuse me of bad faith when all I am doing is responding to the conflicting information that was given by, for example, Maddie Thorson. If these public figures are going to make these public statements that clearly contain conflicting information, that's an insult to my intelligence. And at a minimum, I have every justified right to react to it and connect the dots to try to make sense of the conflicting information narrative that's been handed to us. Everything that I'm doing on this channel at all times is never breaking the terms of service, and it's never lying. If you are aware of an example of that, please bring it to our attention immediately. Otherwise, stop wasting our time with your emotions. You, Dylan Cassidy, need to let my ideas live or die based on their own merit. If you think what I'm saying is bogus, let the market reflect that. You're freely able to leave a disparaging comment, but you take it a step further and say that there's like bad karma being sown here, that I am doing something dishonest or immoral. And that's why when you talk about like bad karma coming back to bite me, that's when it sounds like a threat. So I want to be crystal clear right now that if there is any karma in the mix, if I'm to receive any comeuppance for things that I've done here, let's talk about what that karma looks like so we can make it very specific to ensure that Dylan Cassidy has not threatened me with this comment. As a result of things that I've said here on this channel, perhaps one eventual consequence of that is that there's a podcast that I can't be a guest on. They don't want to talk to Alex Yard because of something I said here on this channel. That's their choice to make. If I lose the ability to go on this or that podcast or do a collaboration with a content creator, that is totally their prerogative. That goes without saying. Similarly, if someone is going to make a video response to something I've said, people can dunk on me all they want. If they disagree with what I'm saying, they're free to do so, but that goes without saying. And for example, one of the reasons why I can stand so firmly by my Spear of Justice investigation original composition video is because the entire planet is free at any time to contribute a response to that to explain why my findings are inaccurate. Since no one has done that, this is what I'm talking. You got to let my ideas live or die based on the market response. You do not now, Dylan, get to edge on the edge of threatening me because the commentary here is not to your liking. If I lose subscribers over these videos, if I get fewer likes than I maybe could have, yeah, that's the cost of doing business when you are not biting your tongue, holding back your viewpoints in order to be appealing to everybody, right? You go to Spawn Wave Media with John as the host. His channel and his live streams make a conscious choice to stay away from any topic that might be polarizing or alienating. His choice to do that comes with the benefits of being broadly appealing to anyone, but it comes at the cost of having certain topics off limits. I am not here on this channel in it for the likes and subscriptions. I am here to connect dots of truthful reporting in the face of fallacies that public figures have presented to us, and I will never apologize for doing so. So I am going to, as a courtesy, assume, Dylan Cassidy, that your comment really only meant that, and it didn't have any bigger threat behind it of something bad that would come back to bite me or haunt me. I firmly reject your moral compass and the implications of that, and any podcast or subscriber opportunities that I lose, all of that goes without saying. I know that you think that I'm indulging weird speculations, but I am merely presenting plausible possibilities that would explain conflicting information given to us from public figures. What is the societal dynamic going on here in which Dylan Cassidy is coming at me so hard? What we're going to do now is go live to a middle school where Malcolm Wilkerson himself is going to explain how he is treated by his peers at his school on the basis that he is smart. Now, I am not showing you this clip to say that I am smarter than Dylan Cassidy or this or that viewer, but I will absolutely give myself credit for connecting dots and making observations in the face of conflicting information in ways that may have bypassed other people's attention. Or if I make a devastatingly effective case as to why 12th Tone has misidentified the tonic of a song, my ability to recognize his flagrant errors and articulately explain why the tonic of the song is actually very simply C sharp, that's what I'm talking. It's less about being smart and more about being uncompromising in reporting on truth that may make Dylan Cassidy not feel good. I'm not in this business to make Dylan Cassidy feel good, but let's go live to Malcolm Wilkerson showing us in real time how he is treated by his peers on the basis of being smart.
Around here, being smart is exactly like being radioactive.
For a more real-life application of this concept, let's now check in with the late, great Norm Macdonald, who will explain why, in the entertainment world, it can make sense in some contexts to censor yourself and play the dumb guy. Don't say anything alienating or polarizing.
Nobody likes a guy smarter than them. That's the worst guy you can be. A guy smarter than the audience. They're going to hate you, you know? Your friend Bill Maher, for instance, you know, he wants to be seen as an intellectual.
Dennis Miller.
Dennis Miller. But Letterman understands, he's smarter than both of them. He understands, play the dumb guy, you know? Play the everyman. Nobody likes a guy smarter than them. That's the worst guy you can be. A guy smarter than the audience. They're going to hate you, you know?
Pander to the general audiences to amass as big of a generic following as possible. Let certain things go, even though you know them to be true. So while I do agree with Norm's assessment of how and why David Letterman versus Bill Maher are treated differently by society and their reactions, although that underlying explanation does explain a lot of what they deal with, it does not mean that Bill Maher failed in a way that David Letterman succeeded. It just meant that they were doing two totally different apples and oranges things. David Letterman was doing a lighthearted night show to be watched by the dozens of millions every night. He's not here to chase down polarizing truths and inconvenient topics. He's just there to make a few jokes, promote this actress's new movie, whatever. Bill Maher is, in the meantime, serving a need that is not met due to David Letterman's broad appeal priority. Bill Maher is delivering uncompromised honesty on some of these topics where, depending on who you talk to, opinions throughout society could be a world apart. He's telling you where he's in. He knows that getting some hate is going to be an inevitable byproduct of that, but that's just a logical consequence of when you're not self-censoring the way a megastar like David Letterman would. So I want everyone watching this now to understand that you will only ever get uncompromising honesty from me, and if you want something else, just go watch another channel. Go watch Spawnwave and Arlo, where they're going to give you an easy-breezy overview of gaming news and call it a day. I am here deep in the underground connecting dots that other people refuse to because of the blowback they could get. But let me say this, the fact that you listen to Arlo is not a problem at all because I listen to Spawnwave Media like every weekday. It's just that I go to Spawnwave Media not for honest, cutting, opinionated pieces, but just for reporting the news. Tell me what to expect about the direct. The fact that I am not like Spawnwave doesn't mean I'm doing YouTube wrong, and that I should not indulge the haters and let them dictate my content by committee. So my smarts, in the form of uncompromising honesty in my viewpoint, means that I'm going to make a devastatingly effective video totally refuting 12 Tone's dishonestly presented music theory analysis. I am not going to waste any breath explaining why me responding in that way serves a public good. It goes without saying, and if that's lost on Dylan Cassidy, I'm sure you can find what you need in the comments. But it becomes a dangerous, bordering on a threat when Dylan Cassidy says, leave Maddie Thorson alone, leave Toby Fox alone, Adam Neely, 12 Tone. Time out, Dylan Cassidy. That poses a serious problem when you say this. It is a total fallacy for you to try to portray this as me going after, for example, 12 Tone. I am only ever critiquing a product that is offered on the free market. In this case, 12 Tone's music theory video. I have every right to critique and review his video, just like you, Dylan Cassidy, or anyone else can critique a video game or an animation project. The idea that 12 Tone's product bears, his name, his moniker, it does not mean that it's off limits to critique his product. Now, inevitably, some of his product is a reflection of his internal thought process, because the product that he is offering, he is asking you to spend your time consuming in exchange for ad revenue or Patreon pledges. That product itself is a result of his thought process. So in order to critique that, it is absolutely necessary to comment on 12 Tone's procedural approach to things. But I am not now making this an ad hominem thing where I am saying 12 Tone is a bad person in every way, right? I am only ever critiquing the dishonesty of his limited scope slices of evidence that he presents to make a new, compelling case about the tonic of the song that no one's ever made before. And when it comes to Toby Fox, I think the fact that you look at Undertales as developed by Toby Fox. Undertale. Who published Undertale? Who released it? Toby Fox. Well, it's not fair that the publishing and developing entity shares the same name as an individual person, and Dylan Cassidy says, I'm not allowed to go after people. Well, I'm not. If I make an original composition investigation video, I'm critiquing and questioning the validity of a composition, which is on the same equal playing field as an animation or a video game. You are allowed to review it and critique it. So because people are especially protective and sensitive of anyone breathing a word of criticism about Mr. Fox, here's a constructive way we can alter the language that we use to discuss such things, is that if I want to critique an entity that published a video game with a soundtrack, instead of just using the name Toby Fox, which brings with it all the loaded baggage of a real person that now you think I'm harassing them, let's make it quite simple and describe it as TobySoft. It's a software company. It's a metaphorical software company that made Undertale, and we can just call them TobySoft. Now, inevitably, some of Toby the person's public statements will become relevant to that. If I make an investigation video on Spear of Justice and people are quick to tell me that I'm operating in bad faith, well, now I have twice as much of a reason to say, well, if you look at Toby Fox's comments with AlphaRad, this is only stacking on the evidence that there's a problem with Spear of Justice because the sweeping statements that the guy in charge over at TobySoft said seems to be this just freewheeling, everything's online, you can take it, you can use it, it counts as public domain. Shame on you, Dylan Cassidy, for asking me to self-censor when there's all this blatant additional evidence that supports what I've reported that I've received a great deal of hate from that radioactive-prone crowd. It is unbelievable that you would say, leave Adam Neely alone. Anything I've said about Adam Neely is really on par with the sort of scorn that Adam Neely delivers upon other folks. If I say that Adam Neely's viewpoint is so foolish that it might as well be flat earther logic, you can literally find examples of Adam Neely talking disparagingly about people who don't agree with him about A equals 432 hertz or whatever. The people who don't agree with him on tuning systems, he calls them flat earther logic folks. He's free to do that, but so am I. There's nothing uniquely toxic or harassing about me saying that Adam Neely's commentary, which he is offering as a product on the free market, is so bogus that to drive the point home, I said this is flat earther level logic. And for you to tell me to leave Maddie alone, all I did was make literally one video on the topic, and then I moved on with my life. As far as the Maddie Thorson video, to this day I stand by it 100%, and you gotta be careful what you wish for. If some of you think that the title of that video was misleading, I actually titled it in the vague way that I did to make it less confrontational toward Maddie. It's like clearly the video was critiquing extremely okay games' counterproductive game development business practices, but I softly presented it with a title that was really just making it about Earthblade and Silksong. If you really want, Dylan Cassidy, I could retitle the video to say, Maddie, finish Earthblade. Did its collapse cause the Silksong cake lie? If you think the title is in bad faith, I would be more than willing to make it much more direct, but I'm sure that by this point you can see that that was a small gesture of goodwill to make it seem less confrontational. But since no good deed goes unpunished, here we are. You can't win sometimes. Whether I'm talking about this or that YouTuber or T. Lopes, I am never tracking down and harassing the person with off-topic replies. I am only ever talking to my own audience about these public figures. If anything that I've said truly actually was ever in bad faith, well then we should expect a comment straightforwardly explaining what I got wrong. But since Dylan Cassidy can't even be bothered to do that and just wants to write off the whole Earthblade video as, you don't understand what game development is, get back to us when you actually have something to say. Being that I am on the frontier of informational discoveries, chasing down threads and connecting dots where others self-censor in order to be broadly appealing to the masses in service of Sir John Feelgood, that does not mean that everything I do here is perfect and airtight. I am human, and so as to demonstrate my sufficient goodwill with this, I will own the thing that I got wrong. As far as how this channel has gotten up and running, I can't say that I've been batting 1,000. There is definitely one thing that I overlooked, and I'm gonna come clean and admit it right now. So, in part 2 now, I'm going to come clean and explain what I got wrong. If you go back to my video, Perfect Pitch is Bad, debunking Adam Neely, you will hear me say that the average lifespan of human beings was about 35 years old up until a couple hundred years ago, where the advent of modern medicine meant that now the average lifespan is expanded up to like 70 or 75. So although that average life expectancy is in some ways technically true, it's not the whole story. It doesn't mean necessarily that the average person back then lived to an average of 35. That's actually just the infant mortality rate dragging that statistic down, which is to say that even before the advent of modern medicine, if you survived those first few dangerous infant years, you could expect to live a lifespan that's about on par with what we live today in 2025. The reason why that average was previously so low is because they were factoring in all those infant mortality death instances, of which there were a great many more prior to the advent of modern medicine. Now, there's a similar fallacy at play when people vouching for equal rights in America for women, they will say that women make 77 cents on the dollar compared to men. That is also a fallacious misrepresentation of what's actually happening, because much like that life expectancy statistic scenario, that 77 cents on the dollar stat also factors in women who have freely elected to not participate in the workforce. So all stay-at-home moms are counted as you make $0 per year. So of course that's going to, on the surface, drag down that calculated average about how much women in America make versus men. But that's a misguided, misleading statistic when you compare equal pay situations between men and women among people who are actually all in the workforce. The pay parity is much closer, just about the same. It might not be perfect, but it is nowhere close to, women only make 77 cents for every dollar a man makes. So big shout out to Joseph Smith 5110, who pointed out this fallacy to me, and I instantly owned it. Joseph was right. This person is right, and I can't deny it. Okay, but even after I admitted the error of my ways, Toast4786 came in and asked me, Alex, do you think that's enough to atone for your mistake? I hereby sentence you to correcting your mistake in the video description and reading the entire Wikipedia list of common misconceptions. So there it is. Toast very epically delivered the first sentence that I've come across since starting up this channel. And the reason why I am going to accept this sentence and serve it is literally for the exact reason I would expect anyone that I make a video about to serve their sentence. And it's for the simple reason that what they have said makes perfect sense. They are right that I got that fact wrong, and they are right that the very suitable and straightforward way to atone for that situation is to correct my mistake in the video description, which I did, and then also to read through the Wikipedia list of misconceptions, which I did, and there were a few in there that I found surprising. And so I'm going to quickly mention a few of the interesting ones that I came across. So here in the final part 3 of this video, I'm going to relay you a few of these other misconceptions that I got corrected. If you asked me in a trivia contest, who invented peanut butter? I would have said George Washington Carver. I mean, that's been the official narrative from grade school to now. But Wikipedia can relay you the information that the first peanut butter-related patent was filed by John Harvey Kellogg in 1895, and peanut butter was used by the Incas centuries prior to that. So this says that George Washington Carver did come up with hundreds of different uses for peanuts, but peanut butter specifically was not his innovation. Today I learned. Living the dream, those Incans. Showing us how it's done. Shout out to the Incans. You knew all along. And you're finally getting your credit thanks to Wikipedia. Next involves the radio adaptation play of The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. If any of you know about that, probably the common narrative you've heard is that they aired the War of the Worlds radio play on the radio, and people tuned into the broadcast, didn't realize that it was a work of fiction, and they thought they were hearing a play-by-play commentary of a horrible, scary alien invasion, so they started to panic like it was the end of the world. Well, Wikipedia's list of common misconceptions will tell you that there was no wide outspread panic. There was only a small amount of people even listening to the broadcast, but it is said that news newspapers, which were competing with radio at the time, kind of played up and exaggerated the panic that had been caused in an attempt to discredit radio. Is a newspaper better? Okay, and then finally, this sort of gray area of a couple of misconceptions that I came across. It's a gray area because it involves language. So for a common misconception, if people say irregardless is not a word, well, this Wikipedia thing says, well, actually, irregardless is a word. And the evidence cited is that it appears in multiple dictionaries. And so at that point, it sort of becomes a moot point circular thing where anything anyone says can eventually be legitimized and added to a dictionary if enough people start saying it. So I think that discussions around whether this or that language is or isn't correct cannot be arbitrated by whether a dictionary buys into it, because a dictionary is clearly going to buy into whatever's trending on social media that year. If dictionaries are just a direct mirror of what people are saying, regardless of whether it makes sense, then moving forward, the only real basis to have any meaningful conversations on this topic would be to say, I disagree with your use of that imagined word irregardless because it contains a contradiction which, if legitimized, will only further confuse meaning and communication. If you start with the word regardless, and then you add the I at the beginning, that I is supposed to negate it. It's supposed to mean not. So when you're just adding an I to the beginning of a word without changing its meaning, well, now you are screwing over the next generation of folks who are going to be taught these word fragments and word suffixes. It would be great if an English teacher could say, every time you see the letter I added to the beginning of a word, that negates it. Well, now that's not always fast and true. So you have to arbitrarily memorize all these exceptions. That is horrible. I know that Sir John Feelgood wants to just say that whatever one says is right because that's what they use, and the dictionary has to reflect that. If it comes at the cost of clarity over time, then there's nothing wrong with people objecting and abstaining from that very lazy tunnel vision game of telephone where words morph in their meaning in ways that contradict the very constituent parts of said word. So if you ever hear me say something that you're unclear about based on my choice of words, you should understand that in a way the language that I speak is English 2000, not English 2025. Because once social media got started up, now language is rapidly evolving depending on societal trends, and I will never be obligated to play along with and legitimize every new term and word that becomes common, even making its way into dictionaries. If there's ever any doubt about something I've said based on my language choice of words, the arbiter that will help you figure out what I mean is saying, all right, if we look at this word, what do these words mean in terms of language rules as they were established in the year 2000, not subject to the arbitrary morphing and misuse and contradictions which have in many circles become legitimized on social media. And finally, the last misconception to touch upon involves frogs boiling in water. You know, there's the classic expression that if you put a frog in water and you slowly, gradually boil the water from room temperature, the frog's not going to think to jump out, whereas if you drop them in water that's already hot, that they're going to jump out. Well, according to the Wikipedia reporters, if you put a frog in boiling water, it's going to die immediately. It would not even have the opportunity to jump out. Furthermore, frogs will attempt to escape cold water if you slowly heat it. They allegedly have a critical thermal maximum, which, when exceeded, will prompt them to get out the space. And finally, one more bonus factoid to clear up a misconception is that the memory span of a goldfish is much longer than a few seconds. It is up to a few months long, says Wikipedia. So I guess they're going to have to patch in a correction to Finding Nemo, Finding Dory, and all the adjacent shorts that got posted to Disney+. So that's going to do it for today's video, everybody. Now that I have extensively explained and defended the integrity and mission statement of this channel, and I had further demonstrated my goodwill by owning a situation where I got a fact wrong, and I served my sentence to achieve atonement not as a favor to toast 4786, but because I independently recognized that it was the right thing to do, and a byproduct of that is that my reputation is in turn strengthened. I am a person who will always change my mind when I am presented with information that contradicts something I've said in the past. And the life expectancy lifespan thing is a low-stakes example of that. But someday, the stakes might be higher, and I am ready to own any errors with honesty anytime they come up. So too would I be equally expecting 12 Tone to own his non-factual, misguided, possibly deceptive, faulty conclusions. But until the next discussion, this has been Alex Yard here at 91.6 WAYZ, the Alex Yard Zone. I'm gonna go enjoy some peanut butter. I'm going to think about the next video I'm going to make where I will debunk some fallacy or connect the dots on a topic in ways that haven't been connected and realized before, and I look forward to it. It might not be your cup of tea, you, viewer. You may come to realize that my channel and my viewpoint is not for you. You can go watch David Letterman, you can go watch Spawnwave and Arlo. That scene, that market exists. I am here offering the uncompromised truth that is hard to find elsewhere, and I am fully ready and willing to accept people who don't like me. They are even allowed to challenge my character, but you bet that I'm gonna respond back firmly to said challenges as a means of clarifying my stance, protecting my reputation, and preserving the foundation of my honesty. Good night, everybody!